Welcome back, everybody. Scott Fischer here, Options for Senior Living. And we are here on the show. Don't let Haboob hit you in the face. And if you are listening to us for the first time, you may be going, what the heck? What is this Haboob thing? If you look over my shoulder, that is a dust storm. That is a dust storm in Phoenix, Arizona. Actually, that's Tempe. Last summer, Haboob are these crazy, wild, unexpected dust storms that literally pummel the desert. We experienced them here in the Great Southwest. Last August, this storm hit us. We weren't thinking there was anything big happening that morning. And the people that were driving home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon got the surprise of their life. That dust cloud was 65 miles wide. It was a mile high, and it's really literally swallowed up the valley. The buildings that you're looking at there are right on Tempe Town Lake. Behind that is the football stadium and all of Arizona State University. And
you wouldn't know it.
What's that?
You wouldn't know it.
You wouldn't know it, no. And so it's the metaphor for life, you guys. It's the metaphor for what happens to our seniors and families that I've worked with. I've been working in these spaces for 25 years, and people are shocked and overwhelmed when things happen to their loved ones, their spouse, or more often it's the adult kids, experiencing the challenges with their parents, and something dramatic has happened. And so the premise of all this is to bring you, the listener, professionals who have encountered these things, who have worked with families in their businesses. And so we've had pastors and nurses and attorneys and various people on. And today I have another attorney buddy of mine, Michael Gerity, joining us. Michael, good to see you today.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
You are welcome. Michael is one of the founders of the law firm Israel Gerity in North Central Phoenix. Tell us about your work and how long you've been an attorney, Mike.
Yeah, I've been an attorney for a few decades now. Came down to Arizona to go to law school there in Tempe. Graduated. I was primarily a litigation attorney for many years, but I found that I would rather assist people with planning to avoid litigation than trying to pick up the pieces after things go wrong. I found that many of my litigation cases, we were fighting with one hand tied behind our back because of simple planning hadn't been done in advance. So now we spend the majority of our time doing that kind of planning, estate planning in general, along with elder care, elder law, and then Medicaid planning as well. So everything is an effort to get people in the right position to avoid the haboob.
I got to ask you, why is it human nature, and maybe there's no answer, but I'll ask anyways, why is it human nature to wait till the crisis? My motto is call me before the crisis, talk to me first. But why is it human nature that we just sit on our hands and then bam, stuff happens?
I think, at least in the area of estate planning, there's the fear of your mortality that plays a big role in this. Nobody wants to talk about dying. Nobody wants to talk about planning for death. Nobody wants to sit around and have a big conversation about what happens when they're not here anymore. And so because of that, it's an uncomfortable topic. I think everybody's got it on their to-do list, and it sort of hangs over a lot of clients. I tell you, when we finish the estate plan or the Medicaid planning for people, we get a lot of sighs of relief, the peace of mind that they just bought, and they knew they needed to do this all along. But yeah, I think that it's a bit of a fear of the mortality, and then it's also that inclination to be a little too optimistic. Nobody expects that tomorrow might be the last day, but that bus may be coming around the corner. And so, with estate planning, you only get one chance to do it right, and if you didn't get it done before that chance is up, then you got the crisis, then you got the haboob. So I think that's probably, at least in this area of law, a large part of the problem.
I was invited by a nurse friend of mine to go visit a client of hers yesterday. This nurse does some in-home care and some care management and companionship with various seniors. And so she's in that house, and I'm over there to kind of get an assessment of the situation, maybe outline what it would look like at some point to move from her home, maybe to a senior living setting. And as I'm talking to her, you could feel like the prickly quills of the porcupine starting to, and I said something like, haven't you thought about, and she goes, well, I've thought a lot about it. But I said, do you, what you're thinking about how life's going to end? Most people, we all want to just go to sleep and not wake up, no pain, no tomorrow, just boom, it's over. And some people get that. My dad had that experience. My mom went through years of little by little rocking and rolling until last November we lost her. So I said to the gal, I said, well, probably 8 or 9 out of 10 people are going to have some rattle as they go downhill. Matter of fact, you're probably already on that slope to some degree. And she just was like, no. I'm like, well, you don't get I mean, you can vote, unfortunately, that some people choose to take their own life, but that's not what we were talking about. If life unfolds that way, it's the way it goes. And so I just want to know, people have like an unreal expectation at times about how life is going to end, as you were talking about fear of their mortality. Or
Well, and I think when it comes to, long-term care and nursing home care, there's also a big element of maybe denial or just not wanting to acknowledge. They want to stay in their home. They don't want to go to a place like that. And if you do Medicaid planning, then you're sort of admitting or acknowledging, well, I may not stay in my home much longer, and they don't want to face that specter.
Yeah. I think with more and more examples of senior living that really looks attractive and life can really happen in those places. I've been working with them for a couple of decades, but so many people that are still outside the fence of that look at that and go, they're thinking senior living, they're thinking nursing home, institutionalized, slump block walls, people slump down in their chairs. And I think you're right. I think fear's got a lot to do with it. Fear of the unknown is a big deal. What can we do? Or what message can you and other elder law attorneys, how do we unify our voice to get people to do their planning? I mean, even as young as 18, I mean, we tell our kids, get your plan. I just sent my kids, they're young 20 somethings, but I said, here's the Attorney General website, get your healthcare power of attorney done. Don't be running around at, and 22 years old with nothing declared.
We do several things. I put on webinars and seminars, and we do specifically put them on in senior care facilities frequently. And so there we're going right to some of the people that are really, especially with the Medicaid planning, getting right into the heart of, it's time to do this. People don't recognize that there's when it comes to certain forms of Medicaid planning, we're attempting to transfer assets away to put the person in a position to qualify, but not have all of their assets used for the long-term care, just following the Medicaid rules. But you got a 5-year window to get the planning done before in the ideal situation. You want a 5-year window between the day you do the planning and the day that you need the long-term care. Getting that message out that there's no time is too soon to start that kind of planning. And then with kids, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, man, if you're doing those webinars, in the future, I'd love to help promote those or put those out through our channels or wherever you'd like some of that messaging to get to. Because we've got to get people to do their planning, and they just haven't. Yeah.
And then we post videos and try to splatter them all over every social media we can, and try to get to the younger folks that way too, using things like TikTok and some of those resources that really appeal to those younger kids, and maybe catch them and get them the message that obviously we're not talking about Medicaid planning with them, but estate planning. Even the basics, getting a power of attorney in place, super important, because again, that bus could be around the corner. The kids are the worst. They got forever. They have no concept, but better safe than sorry. And it's that kind of planning is pretty simple and doesn't take too much. And it's really valuable if you need it. And that's really what estate planning is all about. We're planning for contingencies, and hoping we don't need any of it, but good chance you will.
Talk about Medicaid planning real quick, and then I've got a second follow-up question. What is exactly are you talking about for the listener that may not know what you're referring to?
So Medicaid is a needs-based program. So effectively, you're supposed to be poor. There's 3 tests in order to qualify for Medicaid. There's a medical one where you have to be needing of nursing home level of care. but that's not really what we're talking about in the planning stages. The planning stages, we're talking about caps on the amount of assets you can own, and it's extremely low caps, and then caps on the amount of income that you can earn. And if you exceed those caps, you don't qualify for Medicaid, and then you're paying for your own long-term care. Maricopa County, semi-private room, nearly $10,000 a month. So at $120,000 a year, if you don't qualify for Medicaid up front, you're going to pretty soon. You're going to go through all of your assets. You're going to have nothing and no legacy left to leave behind to your family. So Medicaid rules are very complicated, but there are certain assets and certain things that you can do with your assets that certain categories of assets don't get counted when they analyze whether or not you are impoverished and therefore decide whether you qualify. So we, following all the rules of Medicaid, one of the things we do is move assets from one pocket to another. We get them out of the pockets that count against you and move them into perfectly safe pockets that Medicaid, by their rules, has said that doesn't count. Like, for example, the family home. Sink some money into the family home, pay off the mortgage, do some improvements. That family home is exempt from consideration. Your bank account isn't. So we don't want money in the bank account. We want it in there. And so that's one of the techniques. And that's about all we can do when we've got somebody who's in an urgent situation. Hey, dad needs long-term care now.
Right.
That's all we can do.
Right.
We move things around from pocket to pocket, get as much as we can moved into the exempt piles and get them to qualify. If we have more time, we can actually give away assets. And we do that using a Medicaid compliant trust. We basically set up an estate plan, and the person gifts away their assets, or a majority of them, into this irrevocable trust so that they are no longer theirs. But we set it up so that they've got they've got income for their day-to-day living. They've got money set aside to continue living until they need it. And if we make it 5 years before they actually need the long-term care, that giving away of the assets is ignored. And so you've given away everything, put it in a trust that will be inherited by your kids or whoever you want to inherit those assets. And now Medicaid takes over paying your long-term care, but you've actually secured a legacy for the kids. And then even if you don't make it 5 years, there are advantages to this approach that save maybe not all the money. Everything you give away, if you make it 5 years, is protected. If you only make it 2.5, well, there's still a portion of it that's protected. But that's the goal. The goal is to follow the rules. They're complicated, but we're following them, and we are rearranging assets in such a way that we minimize the out-of-pocket expense and maximize what we are preserving for the person's family.
Yeah, Michael, you make a really good point, and I want to make a point that I would say, hey, there's a lot of folks out there maybe that are not attorneys, that are document preparers or various. You said it, the Medicaid rules are very, very complicated. Our Arizona long-term care system is a complex animal to deal with. It's also more challenging if you've got a husband and wife, right? If a spouse is still intact and there's more assets, more things to consider, because you certainly don't want to blow out the assets on the one completely if you've got another one to consider in that equation, right?
You've got that's a situation where you've got somebody called the community spouse. That's the person who's not going into care. And Medicaid, by its design, is not intended to force that person to be impoverished. We just want the person who needs the care to be impoverished.
Right.
But under the rules, that's not so clean and clear. That person has limitations too. And so then the planning becomes even more important. And then you mentioned the Arizona long-term care system at LTEX. The other thing that's complicated about Medicaid is it is a state and federal cooperation, a cooperative program where the federal government puts in money, the states put in the money. But what this means is the federal government says, here's the rules you've all got to play by. But as long as you follow those rules, you can do whatever you want, make things more restrictive or less restrictive. And so every single state has implemented Medicaid in a different way. So there's really no national resource you can pull up and say, well, here's what Medicaid does. Nope, not in Arizona, it doesn't. Not in Mississippi, it doesn't. So that makes it very hard. Like the internet kind of fails because the internet's aimed at giving you nationwide information. and not just the Arizona specific. And there's far less resources when you're looking just for the stuff that really is how it is in Arizona.
You know, what's wild is that Arizona is hardly ever in the forefront of anything, on national stuff. And our Medicaid program, all techs, allowing and working cooperatively with the assisted living industry as an outlet or a resource for it. Many states, you have to go into skilled nursing once you get into their state Medicaid program. But we have a very robust program that includes lots of assisted living options, assisted living homes, assisted living centers. For some of the better ones require some private pay requirements, Michael. Like, they'll want 1 year of private pay, 2 years of private pay. For the best of those All-Tex buildings, not every community accepts the All-Tex program. So in my business, we have to know the right ones and connect clients of yours or clients of Stephanie Bivens or whatever to the right community and merge that with the planning that's being done so that when the time comes and they financially achieve those objectives and they medically meet those requirements, that they can stay in the place that we've selected or picked for them, and it just seamlessly rolls over.
It's fantastic when you find these places that have graded levels of care so that somebody can go in and really just get sort of the community type of still very self-sufficient atmosphere. That's private pay, but that same facility will have more advanced levels of care and allow them to transition from private pay over to Medicaid. Those are fantastic communities. You guys are great at tracking those kinds of those kinds of facilities down for the people who need it.
We do that all the time. I don't know if Stephanie was a guest on the show a few months back, and I don't know if it was on that conversation or others, where she told me that Altex was turning back about 80% of first-time applicants. And so, to make the point even more so, families can do this on their own. They can hire a paraprofessional. Even though it might be a little more money, it's worth the investment to work with the right attorney to navigate this complex world, because it's a government program. And when you get denied, boom, you're at the back of the line again. And there's a lot of people coming to the line to apply for benefits. Go ahead, Mike. You like you're going to say something.
I was just going to say, when we do the planning, we also actually assist the client with the actual application and walk them through and appeals and all that stuff.
The other point I just want to touch on real quick is it's a needs-based program, and people hear that, they go, "Oh, it's a financial thing. Mom's broke; she can qualify." My mom was broke for years, and she didn't qualify until she finally declined so much that she was on hospice care. We applied for benefits, and before we even got anywhere with the application, she was passed. So people have to understand that they have to go through this assessment, this medical evaluation. And I always say you have to fail to pass. You have to score 60 points on this thing. And you have to demonstrate you have a need for assistance with your activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, mobility, toileting, showering, meals. They look at your cognitive status for dementia diagnoses, things like that. So it's not just a free pass for people that are financially in need. You got to demonstrate the medical part of it as well. And that's a holdup for some folks.
And that was the three prongs. There's the assets, there's the income, and then the other one is the medical qualification. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the activities of daily living. You have to need nursing home level care in at least two of those.
Yeah.
So you're feeding yourself, getting in and out of bed, moving from a chair, that kind of thing. So, so we very frequently will stop the process if we don't think that the client is going to medically qualify.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is an advantage, because now we can spend a little more time doing the financial planning, get that squared away while we wait for them to get to a status where they really do need the medical care.
So I imagine, you said you litigated quite a bit, so I imagine that started with a lot of messy, habooby kind of things. So, but the planning is what we want to do to help avert that. But is there a story you can share that man, with just a little bit of planning, you might have averted a whole big mess and you ended up in court over it. Can you share something like that when it goes really wrong for people?
Yeah, I'll talk about a standard estate planning situation. And this is a case where the person tried to do some planning, but they didn't get across the finish line.
Okay.
If you set up a trust, trust is a wonderful estate planning vehicle in that you can completely avoid the probate process. Probate is basically a lawsuit that has to be filed when someone passes away by their loved ones. Who wants to go and file a lawsuit and go to court when you've just lost a loved one? But it's necessary in order to give somebody the power to sign documents to transfer assets, collect possessions, pay off creditors, all that stuff. Because that's how we transfer ownership. You sign a deed to transfer a house. You sign a title to transfer a car. You sign a check to transfer money. We sign things. Once you've passed away, you're not there to sign. So the beauty of a trust is we arrange it so that the trust, kind of like an entity, like a corporation or an LLC, it owns everything. And just like with a corporation or an LLC, there's a president or a manager. And if that person were to pass, it wouldn't matter when it comes to dealing with corporations, buildings and cars and computers. All that stuff is owned by the corporation. So a new president comes in and they can issue orders and deal with that property. Well, same thing with the trust. We put everything into the trust. We set up a successor trustee who's the manager. And when you pass or become incapacitated, that person just steps in and now they've got all this power. So no need for probate. Wonderful thing. The problem comes when people set up this beautiful estate plan and then don't successfully move all of their property over so that it is owned by the trust. So had a client, I did not do the estate planning. Somebody else did the estate planning before I came into the picture. Father had prepared a trust, and the trust was intended to include the family business, which was a store. The business owned the building and the land it was on, quite valuable. And this guy had 6 kids, and he intended to leave this business and the building to the youngest kid, who was my client, because the youngest kid was the one who had shown the interest in the business, had helped dad out, all that stuff. You don't want the other 5 to have it. They never gave it, any care about that business. So that was his goal. He built this trust, and he unfortunately failed to transfer the building and the ownership of the business over to the trust. And then he passed. 5 years of litigation. The other 5 kids, well, actually, the kids broke into 2 factions. There was my client's side and the other side. But for 5 years, they battled over that business, and in the process, turned the estate into almost nothing. By that time, we finally ended up having to hire a professional fiduciary because nobody trusted anybody else to handle the management. My client had been the original personal representative appointed, and so huge mess where the fighting cost everybody everything. Nobody got anything.
Nobody got anything.
Yeah, and that's just he started off with the right intentions. The father did. He put together the plan. He just didn't pull the trigger on the most important part of that plan. And by the way, that's a big deal to us. Obviously, having seen situations like that in my litigation days, our firm is very active in that funding. It's called funding. When you move your property over so that it's owned by the trust, we are very active in the funding process with our clients. We hold the hands until we ensure that we've gotten them across the finish line, because I think it's malpractice not to do that. A lot of firms don't. And that kind of situation can only be avoided if the attorney is making sure, instead, a lot of firms, huge estate plan, 3 inches of paper, and then they put the funding instructions in a pile on top of that, and they slide it across the desk, and they say, all right, go do all that. And, best intentions, those people go home and they take that stack and they set it on the desk, or they set it on the bookcase. And 2 years later, it's sitting on the desk or it's sitting on the bookcase. It's covered in dust. And they didn't do it. Yeah. And now you've built this. The trust is kind of like a treasure box. You've built the treasure box, but you've put nothing into the treasure box.
In it.
Yeah. So we don't do that. We actively prepare the deeds. We work with the client all the way across the finish line. Doesn't mean things don't get messed up later on down the road sometimes, but we won't let them leave our office unless we know that everything is done and across the finish line.
Did you always want to be an attorney, Mike?
Not exactly. I wanted to be. I had read All Creatures Great and Small, those books, that whole series, and I loved animals. And I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a kid.
Really?
And I even went to Colorado State University, which has one of the premier vet programs in the country.
Really?
But what I didn't know, what nobody told me, I was a little suburban kid, had a few cats. When I got up to school, I discovered that getting into vet school is exceptionally competitive. And most of my competition had grown up in Eastern Colorado or Wyoming or Nebraska, and they had helped the local vet birth calves, and they had tight relationships and volunteered every summer with the vet. I'm not going to get into this place. Plus, I quickly realized that I liked happy, healthy animals a lot better than the sick and dying ones. So I flailed for a couple of years, wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then I was a biology major, and most of the people who drop out of the vet program switch their major, but I didn't want to do that. So I wasn't really sure what I could do with my biology major. And I was sitting in class one day, and this guy was like, "Hey, I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to do biological patents." And so I thought, that's pretty interesting. And so I went out and took the LSAT and did really well and got into law school. And I did, in fact, pass the patent bar, which is it's the only specialized bar in the whole country.
Really?
I am a licensed patent attorney, but I don't do that for a practice. It's painfully boring work. So,
wow. So going to Arizona State was law school here. Then you came from Colorado down here. Okay.
Yep, that's right.
Gotcha. Well, in order to get into this line of work, the attorneys that specialize in family law, elder law, this estate planning, you gotta like people. You know that you're going to be dealing with some complex family dynamics. You're going to deal with people, and you have a heart for folks to make sure they get through the finish line. If you're hand holding them and funding and all the other various details, you gotta have a heart for people, right?
It's a very personal relationship area of practice. And by the way, we are very adverse to the sort of document shop approach to estate planning. Come in, buy your docs, walk out the door, and never see each other. We want to build relationships with our clients. We want to be their trusted attorney advisor for the rest of their lives and be their resource. But I think the thing that's magical about this area of practice is, you got to be a people person, but man, the appreciation that you get in this line of work, very unlike what I got in the litigation world, where, even if you won for your client, maybe you didn't win enough, or the bill was too high, or who knows, somebody's always got some reason to be unhappy. Here, there's no opposing party. There's no fight. Well, I mean, I guess once you get into some of the probate issues, but on the planning side, you're just helping. You're just helping these people, and they're super appreciative. We get hugs from our clients. That never happened back in my litigation days. So it's pretty magical. It's fun. And like I said before, that giving them that peace of mind, you can see the relief on all their faces when they finally sign that stuff.
After 25 years of walking into people's homes and living rooms, like I did yesterday with this gal, when they do accept what you say, or they feel like, oh my gosh, somebody's heard me, and you see their shoulders drop, or their head roll back, and they feel that relief, it's still probably the best payback I get, for doing what I do after all these years.
100%. This is really rewarding area of law.
Hey, before we wrap this up, and this has been fantastic, and thank you for carving out some time today to share. Maybe you've touched on it, but take a minute to expand on it. Like, what would you want more people to know, or more people to even maybe take action to do, so that we urge them to not wait till the ice breaks? If it's cracking, recognize it and do something, or even before that.
Being proactive is the most important thing. When it comes to standard estate planning, it's not that painful. It's really a very easy process. And even the cost, if you stop and think about it, what we charge to do the planning up front is a fraction of what your family's going to end up paying to do the probate if you don't do the planning up front. So you're just basically prepaying that inheritance for your kids or whoever you're leaving your stuff to. so that they don't have to spend, $6,000 to $10,000 on a probate. And that's an unlitigated probate. That's a clean,
Right.
simple,
Uncontested. Yeah.
uncontested. Yeah. You only get one chance to do it right on the regular estate planning. When it comes to the Medicaid planning, I'd say the most important message is, people hear, oh, well, you got to be poor. And I've heard about this thing called spend down. So I'm going to spend down all mom's assets, and then we'll qualify. No, please don't. Please don't. Please come to
Get
us.
some help.
We get some planning help. That the rules are complicated, but by following those rules, we are following the letter of the law. Nothing sneaky here. We are literally just following the letter of the law and moving things around. And by doing so, we let you preserve a legacy to leave to your heirs that people lose if they don't bother to do planning.
A couple of years back, I guess it's been 4 or 5 now. My wife's uncle, her favorite uncle, had medical health history. We've been complaining of cough, and maybe they called it emphysema or COPD or something. Well, all of a sudden she gets a call from her cousin, and Uncle Danny has stage 4 lung cancer that's metastasized throughout his body and into his brain. And he lived up in north of Cottonwood. We went running up there to go help Danny, and we took Stacy's cousin with, and I started asking Danny about his powers of attorney. Does Marisa can speak for on behalf of? How do we, where are we at with all this stuff? And he's like, why do I need all that? I only got one daughter. He had, I don't know how much, he had plenty of stuff, north of $1 million in homes, other real estate, he had plenty of stuff. And Marisa spent the next year even though it was uncontested, she had lost her brother and her mother. So it was just her and Danny. It still had to go through that pipeline. I had to get her to the bank and while he could still speak, and he was gone in 3 weeks, Michael. He was over super fast, and he didn't do any planning at all. So it's been an inspiration for Stacy and I to use our business as a platform to highlight the things you said, get planning done. Don't wait for the mess or the crisis. Please, please, please. It's so much easier to do it before you go to court.
Yeah. And people I hear that kind of thing that your uncle said an awful lot. Oh, my estate's just so simple. I don't need any of this.
Yeah.
It's not. It seems simple. And some of my biggest cheerleaders as clients are the ones who came to me for a probate, like their spouse died or something like that, or their parent died. And they finished that process. And then they're like, okay, now I am absolutely putting an estate plan in place because I'm not subjecting my heirs, my kids, to what I just had to go through.
Amen to that. Well, thank you, Michael Gerity. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be a part of this. And I really want to create and build a community of people listening in to hear from other professionals that are encountering so many aspects of the challenges that are associated with aging, the things that cause family a lot of crazy stress and angst and chaos, and we want to help you avoid all that. So, Michael, thank you for joining us, and to our audience, thank you for being here today. Just want to point out, we have a private Facebook group called the Aging Parent Tribe. You can find us on Facebook, the local Phoenix chapter. There's multiple chapters around the country now. We're the number 2. My buddy up in Colorado started the first one, Michael, but this is a private Facebook group for caregivers. And we have over 600 members now to the group. People can come in and share their stories, get resources, just commiserate, come in and puke and feel bad about your family, whatever. We get all kinds of conversations in the Aging Parent Tribe. So I tell you about it for your clients. And for those of you that are listening, come check us out and join us. A lot of good support is happening in that group. So we'll see you on the next episode of Don't Let Haboob Hit You in the Face. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Bye-bye.